Hi there, I'm Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast. Welcome to this episode brought to you by our Maxillary Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Maria Simbra from Dr. Maria on Speaking. We have a great conversation with Dr. Simbra about designing your media presence life. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you will get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
Hey guys, I'm super excited today. We have Dr. Maria Simbra with us. She was the medical reporter at KDKA CBS Pittsburgh for not more than, only 19 years. She there reported outbreaks and patterns of disease, health and wellness, celebrity illness. Oh, I wonder which celebrities. We can talk about that. Screening recommendations, medical innovation, the types of things that media asks doctors to comment on regularly. Her first career was in neurology. She had a residency in the University of Pittsburgh, a fellowship in neurophysiology at the Medical College of Virginia, and then she went into private practice with Valley Neurological Associates in Pennsylvania. Then she became the clinical assistant professor of neurology at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. She's an MD, MPH, and has a master's degree in journalism and mass communication. So if you want to learn about communicating journalism, we're in the right place today. When she's not being in media and presentation coach, she's a wife, a mom, gecko master, which we're going to learn about today too, a memoirist. Well, you'll pronounce that better than me, on page and stage. And you can see her at her website, drmariaonspeaking.com. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome, Dr. Maria Simbra.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz. It's great to be here.
Oh my goodness, we have so much to talk about and learn. And, eventually we'll get those wonderful courses. We do have some questions in the interim, which are going to be answered shortly. That's awesome. So little Maria, where was she? Did she want to be a doctor when she was a young girl?
Well, that's an interesting question. So as you just told everyone, I've had a most unusual career. So, as you mentioned, what I currently do now, I am a media and presentation coach for doctors. I am a doctor coaching doctors speaking. But my first career was in neurology and a private practice and academia. My second career was in TV news, in journalism. I was the medical reporter at KDKA, CBS Pittsburgh for 19 years. And now I'm a media and presentation coach. So I think to understand how I got through this circuitous career path, we should go back to the beginning, where it all started. So I decided to become a doctor when I was 20. And I was a biology and chemistry major in college, and graduation was approaching. And I had to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And, my dad's a doctor, and he would be so proud if his one and only daughter, his one and only child would follow in his footsteps. And my professors were looking at my good grades, and they were nudging me toward med school. And all of my peers, they're playing the medical school application game. So, super achiever me, I had to play along too. And in 1993, I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. And then I did my medical internship at the Medical Center of Delaware. It's now called ChristianaCare, but to me, it will always be the Medical Center of Delaware. I finished my residency at the University of Pittsburgh, my neurology residency, and I was named outstanding resident in my class.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm
Overachiever.
I'm still proud of that to this day. I went on to do my neurophysiology fellowship at the Medical College of Virginia, and then I went into private practice in Monaca, Pennsylvania. And then I eventually became a clinical assistant professor of neurology at UPMC. Now, this all sounds like a very typical career path for a doctor, right? However,
well, so far, most of us don't decide to be a doctor later at 20, but yeah.
Yeah. So even from my earliest weeks of med school, I had serious misgivings about my career choice. And all along the way, through med school, through residency, I would have these crises where I almost quit. But as you know, once you are in the medical education system, you cannot get out. The people, the powers that be will reel you back in because they worry about the attrition rate and the house staff funding and all these things. So I ended up staying in. And then I found myself in private practice. And like, this was it. This was going to be my life for the next 30 years. And it was sucking my soul, right? You have, pervasive threat of a lawsuit and the assembly line field of the workday and the hospital.
You didn't like prior authorization?
Yeah, all of the administrative things, right? All of those things. And I'm thinking, I have to get out. I have to get out now. So I decided I was going to change careers. But what do I do? Because, all I've done is train to be a doctor. So I started reading everything I could about career change. And I read this one book called I Could Do Anything If I Only Knew What It Was by Barbara Sher. And in the book, she gets you to think about all the things that ever lit your world on fire. So, whether it's your personal life, professional life, everything. And for me, growing up, it was always about writing and performing. Like I wrote music. I wanted to go to musical theater, but creative careers like that weren't allowed in my family. So put those interests aside. But I also like the analytical part of being a doctor. And I think that's part of how I chose neurology as a specialty. And I thought, well, how can I put these three things together? Writing, performing, and being analytical. And I thought, well, television journalism would be a way. But how do I do that? Because at this point, I'm only a doctor. So I reached out.
Only a doctor. That's so funny.
So I reached out to news directors all across the region, and no one was giving me the time of day. But one did get back to me, and he said that I had to go back to school. If this is what I wanted to do, I had to go back to school. And I think he thought he'd be rid of me that way. You tell a doctor she has to go back to school. She's not going to do it. But I showed him I did go back to school. I got my master's degree in journalism and mass communication. As part of that, I did an internship at the TV station at KDKA. And they asked me to stay on as their medical reporter. And I did for 19 years. I was their medical reporter. And I'll also point out that I also have an MPH, and I call it my midlife crisis degree because I finished it when I was 50. And I think I did it mostly out of homage to a beloved med school professor, Dr. Bruce Dixon. He was my attending during my acting internship. And he was a brilliant internist and infectious diseases physician. And he was also the director of the Allegheny County Health Department. And I think had he not been my attending that month, my career would have turned out very differently. He showed me that as doctors, we had a duty to make the world a better place beyond just practicing medicine, to use our background to make the world a better place beyond just practicing medicine. And I've tried to live up to the lessons of Dr. Dixon through my various careers. Now, sadly, he died before I finished my degree, and I'm still quite sad about how that all turned out. But I am happy that he inspired me to get my MPH.
Well, congratulations for all that studying and careers and being persistent and getting to what your passion was, right?
Right.
And what you've done is that, as you say, as a medical reporter, you're really making the world a better place by informing the community about the way things should be. And having that background as just a physician, as you say, really is extremely important for many of us to be in those positions where we can educate others, especially now as misinformation has grown through the years, right? And in that, you were able to, follow your family's desires, but also achieve your own personal desires to a level where many of us find really amazing to be able to accomplish what you've been able to do and proven yourself to yourself and to others, right? Because that's what you've been doing there all along. So tell us about your original reportings, how that went for you. How did you feel when you were the first few times in front of the camera, what they were asking, what were you reporting to?
Well, it's incredible to think. So I started in TV news in 2002, but I did an internship there for the 6 months prior to that. And it's crazy to think that the very first big story of my news career was during my second week of internship, and it was 9/11. And then the last big story that I covered when I retired from TV news last year was the pandemic. So these were the bookends to my career.
Oh my goodness. Nothing. You couldn't do anything small, huh? You had to do big things.
Well, it's amazing to think that that's how it all happened. But yeah, 9/11 was a big deal. I remember that day. It was a beautiful day, and I was so excited. I was doing this internship, and I was getting my foot in the door at the station, and I walked in, and I could tell it was just very tense. And I saw the pictures on the screen, and at first I thought it was an accident, but then the second plane hit, and then the newsroom just erupted into this frenzy, and the anchors ran into the studio to go into continuing coverage, and we went to the conference room, and everybody's getting assigned to go here, there, and everywhere. And I found myself in a news truck going to the airport because they were evacuating the airport. And, I was with one of the seasoned reporters, and he was getting man on the street interviews from the people being evacuated from the airport. And one of the evacuees came toward me and told me there was a plane headed right for Pittsburgh. And, I was shocked and scared, and I didn't know what to do with this information. And I wanted him to tell us on camera, but he just walked away. And, I told the reporter who was with me, and he just kind of shrugged like, gosh, that's horrible. I was like, that's it? That's your only reaction?
The response to the intern to big, huge news that are not trustable right now.
Well, I mean, he played it by the book. He couldn't, unless we could corroborate it, we really couldn't.
Exactly.
Report it. So, but, the guy was right. I mean, we now know that plane was destined for DC, except the passengers, the heroic passengers, they went down in Shanksville, just a couple hours away from Pittsburgh. So, yeah, it was an eye-opening day. That was my introduction to journalism. That was a huge thing. But, it's not so unlike being a doctor, right? You're running toward the danger. You're giving information to people so that they can make better decisions for themselves. It's similar in some ways, and I think that day affirmed, my new career direction.
So, you had a big event, and when we fall in love with somebody, we say, like if you have these big tragic events or big impactful, then the connection becomes stronger. Is that how you feel it happened to you, becoming a connection stronger with journalism on that day?
I think so. I think it was an eye-opening day, and I think it showed like what the worst possible type of story you could be covering. And these big, horrible stories do happen from time to time. So I saw that. But, as I settled into my news career, I kind of became, like, my specialty became the feature story, where I highlighted some sort of medical innovation and, told a patient's story. They were struggling with this problem, and they were trying these things, and along comes this new therapy, and, because of this new therapy, this result happens, and now they're playing with their grandchildren, or they're back to work without pain, or whatever the outcome is. And this kind of became my specialty. This is how I reported on many things. And it was a good niche to have, because I think people needed that information. I heard from a lot of doctors that patients came to them only because they saw the story on the news. And had they not seen that, they may not have ever gotten the help that they needed.
So let's talk about the logistics of that, right? You're working now, you've graduated, they told you to stay on. Tell us about how it happens in terms from salary, you signed a contract with them, you negotiated a contract, or they just told you this is what it is, and you eventually negotiated afterwards. And then after that contract was in, how was your daily work, day to day? Like, what would you do? How the research would happen, your writing, your recording, your contacts, how does it all happen like that?
Right. Okay. Very good questions. Let's back up to the contract thing, because I think this is something people need to know. So the standard practice in the business is to pay union scale. So depending on which market you're in. So all of the television markets in the United States are ranked, and it's based on television households in that market. So New York is number 1, LA is number 2, Chicago's number 3, and so forth. Pittsburgh We are now 24. Actually, I think we're 26 now. When I started in the business, we were 21, 22, and it just sort of dwindled over the years. So we're a smaller market now. So there isn't a whole lot of room for negotiation. There's standard practice in the business, and that's kind of how you're paid. And, even though I was a doctor, I was making what people in TV made. So, it came out to be like $26, $27 an hour. So it really has to be a labor of love. You're not going to do it for the money because it's definitely not going to be a doctor's salary. But my daily routine it went something like this. I would present some ideas in the morning for, what medical stories would be possible.
So they have you going in the morning they meet like at 6 or 7 or 8 in the morning?
Oh, no.
At 4 in the morning?
The morning meeting usually happens around between 9:30 and 10:30. Okay. Because there has to be a certain amount of time in the day for things to happen. So, that's how we cover news, is we have to let things happen and then we figure out what we're going to do. So we have a morning meeting to decide what all of the reporters are going to cover. And then they have this window of opportunity in the early afternoon to gather all of those elements, so the information, the video, the interviews, all of that. And then they have to have it all assembled by around 3 o'clock, because the editor has to put all the pictures, all the video, and the words together so that the report can go out on air in the 4, 5, or 6 o'clock news. So it's a very high pressure day to get that all put together. So, reporters don't have a whole lot of time to get all of the background information. So, you have to be able to process information quickly. And, as soon as you get your assignment, you're on the phone calling your sources. And over time, you do develop certain, for me, it would be doctors that I would call regularly. And I knew I had this set because I knew that they got what I did. And they knew that I needed this quickly and that they needed to be available. And that, and I knew that they would also speak reasonably on the subject, that they have some understanding of the information and what they could say and what they couldn't say. And, they were familiar with the data and the evidence and all of the good things that make information sound. So that's basically how it came together. It's a high pressure day, but it's an orderly progression from assignment to on air.
Was it like Monday through Friday, the same thing every day?
Yeah, the news day is pretty much the same in terms of its structure. Now, the news of the day would change day to day.
And if you had any special projects, would you have like anything stored just in case, like that day you didn't have this news or something didn't happen, then you would have some stories stored that you would present? Right.
So, I talked earlier about being doing a lot of features, and those are nice because those are what we call evergreen. Like you can, those aren't time sensitive necessarily, that they don't reflect the news of the day necessarily. So some of those you could store. And, my managers like those in a sense because they could also promote them. Like they could do commercials to get people interested in watching the news that day since they had it already assembled. They knew what the story was about and they could make commercials to entice viewers.
And then, so tell us, was there a particular celebrity story that caught your eye more than others?
That caught my eye. When celebrities got sick, that was more of a news of the day kind of story, right? Because those are always unpredictable. Now, I live in Pittsburgh, and this is a very sports crazy town. So anytime Ben Roethlisberger, who's the quarterback of the Steelers, anytime he had an injury, I had to report on it. So whether he stubbed his toe or whether he, there was one time when he wrecked on his motorcycle. It was a bad wreck. I think he was turning left and the car hit him and he needed major reconstructive surgery. So that was kind of a big deal. So I had to cover that. But, if it's, Joe Paterno, who's the coach of Penn State, he developed cancer. So I had to report on that. Or even Angelina Jolie, when she had her double mastectomies, I had to report on that. So it varied day to day which celebrity and what realm of celebrity it involved. But those always kept things interesting.
Is there something from the job that you really did not like? Like from day to day, you say, I don't like this, but it's,
Yeah.
but then that was,
That's an interesting.
like, because I think you just did like a whole list of things you didn't like about practicing medicine, right?
Yeah.
At the beginning. But
Right.
being a journalist, there's some people might not like the pressure, having to prepare this, having to get the story, and that might be different for other people. In
Yeah.
your case,
Interesting.
was
Right.
there something that you said, you know what, this is a challenge, but it doesn't matter because I love these other 90 things so much that this little thing doesn't?
That's an interesting question. With every job, there's going to be pressure, and there are things that you don't like. And people. So when I first started in TV, I was doing both. I was still practicing, and I did TV. Eventually, I dropped the practice when my daughter came along because it was just too many things. But people would ask me, well, which do you like better? And I would tell them, both are very high pressure jobs. And it's just a matter of choosing which pressure. And I said, well, if I get to choose my pressure, then I'll choose TV. It was just a different rhythm and a different product at the end of the day, and so that's what I chose. Now, as I mentioned, I did retire last year. It was actually last May of 2021, I retired. And it got to the point. I mean, I was in the business almost 2 decades, and the business changed a lot in that time. And, the responsibilities of the reporters changed. There was a lot of emphasis on social media, and that gets to be draining. And not only that, there was a lot of turnover in the staff, and there was a whole new management team that came in. And, I realized, okay, I think it's time to move on. It's time to do something else. And so I ended up retiring, and I found a job with a large public relations firm. And they did a lot of work with pharmaceutical companies. And I joined a small team there, whose job it was to prepare executives for the media interview. So, for example, if the president of the drug company got asked to go on Good Morning America, my team's duty would be to prepare that individual with lights, camera, the whole shebang. And it didn't take me long, though, to figure out that the hierarchy of that company was not for me. And I made a quick exit. And I was kind of bummed because I thought I really would have liked that kind of work. And I moped around for a couple of weeks. But then I thought, why do I need a company to do that? I could do this for myself. And that is how I opened my own business. And that is how Dr. Maria on Speaking LLC was born. And so that's what I have been doing. Now, I was in that job long enough, though, that I thought, well, if I were coaching somebody on how to approach the media interview, how would I do it? And I came up with this 3-step cyclical framework. And it is the basis for the courses that I have in my business.
So you are a physician,
yes,
a reporter,
yes,
you have your other master's degree, and now you're a coach entrepreneur because you have this business, right?
yes,
I want to go in detail about the business, but I have curiosity first.
yes.
Gecko Master.
Yes. Oh, okay. So everybody talks about their pets, right? Because they're part of the family. So, most people have dogs or cats. We have a gecko. So we got this gecko for my daughter's 10th birthday. And we love this little guy. He's about 5 inches long, and he's orange with black spots. He's a leopard gecko. And he is the cutest little guy. And, he lives in this aquarium on our kitchen counter. And we feed him crickets and mealworms, and he's just a delight. He climbs all over his plants, and we have a little castle in there for him in his little house, and he just keeps us entertained. And
that's awesome. Something you love. The other thing is that you write memoirs.
Yes, I do. So yeah, that's another hat I wear. So it's not part of the business that I do, but yeah, it's another passion of mine. I write memoirs, and I'm a memoirist on page and on stage. So my words on page appear in lit mags. For example, Sad Girl Review, Doors Ajar, Page and Spine, The Grief Dialogues, Hags on Fire. I have a couple essays on menopause in there, and the Twin Bill. I have an essay on baseball. So, it runs the gamut in terms of what I write about. But I'm a memoirist on stage as well. So I perform my memoirs. I've been heard at The Moth here in Pittsburgh, also Wordplay. at Bricolage Theater here in town, and also Just Saying, which is a storytelling show at Kingfly Spirits in the Strip District here in Pittsburgh. So all over town. But yeah, it's another passion of mine.
Well, when you were saying you were an overachiever, you were not lying.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into these courses because I've been part of your courses, and I really loved the way that you have organized these courses. In particular, I've been part of your pilot course, so thank you for that opportunity. By the way, I had fun for that time that I was there, and I learned a lot. So tell us about your courses in detail, how it helps our physician entrepreneurs.
Yes. So my main course, my signature course, are my media skills courses. And as I mentioned, I have this 3-step framework to help doctors prepare for a media interview. So there are 3 modules, and I call them capsules because, we're doctors. So the first module is called Capsule 1, the workup. And that one is all about motivations and the benefits of speaking to the media. We talk about getting inside the reporter's head and understanding news pressures, and also about getting media opportunities for yourself. The second module is called Capsule 2, the prep. So at this point in the cycle, the reporter has reached out to you and the media interview is imminent. So in this unit, I talk all about all the things you need to work out with the reporter ahead of time, getting yourself ready, getting your space ready, preparing your message. And then the third capsule, Capsule 3, is called the procedure. And in this one, at this stage in the cycle, the interview is actually happening. It is taking place right now. So at this point, we talk about all the things you need to be mindful of during the actual interview, like your body language, the words you use, and how to get an interview back on track if it starts to go off the rails, and also things to do after the interview is over. And then the cycle repeats itself. And so this is the basis for my media skills courses in my business. You can do this with video lessons only, and then there are also versions of it where you can do reinforcement exercises with feedback online. And then I have a component where there's coaching. So you do the lessons and then you have one-on-one coaching sessions with me, 30-minute coaching sessions where we actually practice a media interview. I put my reporter hat back on and we do one for real before you actually have to do one for real. So it's very realistic practice for the actual experience.
So it's a very complete topic, a very complete service that you're providing, besides the things that you can do on your own, and then you can have the one-on-one. To me, I have to tell you, the most difficult part would be getting makeup all day long in front of the news. That would be something that I would not like to be doing myself.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that was if there was any advantage of the pandemic, which I don't think there should be any, it would be like not having to wear makeup, but that's me. On the other hand, we had all these people online who were like putting makeup all day long in front of the camera for, for social media, which was a different thing. Yeah. But so you talk about these 3 processes because we have to prepare, right? Like we have to get ready. Many of us are asked these questions, and they call, if you belong to a hospital, the reporters will call the hospital. Hey, do you have somebody to talk to us on this thing? And then there you go. Next thing, they have you on the news and they're asking things that you don't know anything about. So tell us about some common mistakes we make as physicians when we're confronted with a situation like that, where we're being asked by our local news or even national news to comment on something.
Right. Well, I will give you 3 tips because I know a lot of people have not spoken to the media before and they want to know how do you do this? What are some ways to, captivate the reporter if I've never done this before? So let me go over a few tips in that regard. So here are the 3 basic things that you should do. 1, tell stories. 2, be available. And 3, highlight the good stuff. So let's talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail. So number 1, tell stories. Stories are so powerful. The human brain is primed to process stories. It's how we make sense of the world around us. It's how we understand relationships. It's how we make information sticky. For example, if you're talking to your friend across the country and you say, yeah, it rained like crazy here on Tuesday. Or you could say, yeah, it rained like crazy here on Tuesday, and it was my turn to give grand rounds, and I was on the far side of the hospital courtyard when the sky just opened up and started to pour, and I got soaked. So there I was standing in front of the whole auditorium, giving my talk, looking like a drowned rat. Which do you think your friend is going to remember? So, the stories make the information sticky. Now, that's not to say that the facts aren't important. You need the facts, you need the data, you need the science, the clinical trials, the statistical analysis, you need all of that. But if you can wrap that up in a story, it helps people remember it. And as I mentioned earlier, that patient story is golden because it has the stakes built in from the beginning, right? The patient is dealing with this life-threatening or life-altering condition. Something needs to happen to act on that. And then there's this result. And then something changes in their life. They're back with their grandkids, or they're back to work, or whatever it might be. So find those patient stories to convey the information. So that is the number one tip. All right, number two, be available. Now, when I say be available, that doesn't mean on your schedule, that means on the reporter's schedule. Because like I talked about earlier, they have that really high pressure day. The response I dreaded whenever I called the doctor to set up an interview, they would say, oh, well, I have a 4:00 opening next Tuesday. Can we do it then? And I'd say, no, this is for today's news. And they says, oh, okay, well, I'm seeing patients right now, but I'm done at 5:00. Why don't you swing by then and we'll do it then? And I said, no, I really need this in the next hour or two. Like I said, there's that golden window of opportunity from about noon to 2 that the reporter needs to get everything they need. And if you aren't available at that time, they're going to move on to someone else. So try to carve out a little bit of time in your early afternoon. If you can do it over your lunch break, that would be awesome. And it really only takes 5 to 10 minutes to do an interview, really, if it's done well. So be available on the reporter's schedule. That's tip number 2. All right, tip number 3 is highlight the good stuff. So sometimes I'll be talking to doctors and they'll say, I did a media interview once and I said all this great stuff, but the reporter used the part that made me sound absolutely stupid. And whenever I hear that, I think, well, did you signal that you were saying the good stuff? So there is a way to do this, and it's with a device called flagging phrases. These are verbal cues that indicate the next thing you're going to say is really important. And there's a whole host of these, but just for some examples, what it all boils down to is this, or even more importantly, or after all, and then you go on with your main point. And there's a whole host of these, and I go over them in my media skills courses, but it's good to have a series of flagging phrases in your pocket for the interview. So those are my 3 tips. Tell a story, be available, and highlight the good stuff.
I felt chills because when you mentioned those 3 things, like I'm waiting like for what is it? What is the important, what is it that what's the meat of it? Tell me exactly when you were going to say that. And the stories part is so true. We can go ahead and mention all these statistics and all this stuff. And then you have your argument based on this, the scientific world. And then you see somebody counteracting your point, and they just have to tell a patient story. And that's it. Your argument of all these statistics is gone because they have a story on their side of something that's really might be misinformation, not necessarily accurate, but the story won the argument because people connect with that. So that's so true. The other thing about availability, I've been like, they call to the office, like, are you available right now? It's like, oh my goodness. And then you have to juggle. You're going to be late with the patients. Are you going to do this for the community? What is that you're going to be telling? And then if you have patients waiting, notify them, hey, the news are here. There's something very important we have to do for our community. And then boom, cooperate with the news person. So it's a lot of juggling. And yes, you have to be ready and makeup.
I do go over that in my course, and it's not as involved as you might think. I go over some basic makeup tips, so it's not that bad. I do want to point out, you said you have to get ready. So there is something else that I do, and I have a blog. It's a medical news blog, and I post it in the morning between 9:30 and 10:30. And it's basically a summary of 3 to 5 medical headlines of the day. And I do this because I want doctors to be ready. I know what types of stories the media are keen on covering day to day, because I did that for 19 years. And so I summarize a few of the key possibilities that might be, the media might call you about for a comment. So, just to get a heads up, if doctors are keen on doing media interviews, if they want to look at my blog, that would help them out, in terms of anticipating what the media might need that day. And they can get CME just for reading my quick little blog.
Guys, if you still haven't been convinced of how to contact Dr. Simbra, like you have to do this if you want to social media. I don't know what else, because she has it ready for you. She has this course where she teaches you how to do it. She has one-on-one, and in the mornings, she prepares you every single morning through her blog so that you can be ready for the news. It's like wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here today with us. This has been amazing. If we want to go through the course, and if we want to go and find you for one-on-one coaching or go to your blog, can you please tell us where to find you, how to connect with you?
So the number one place to find me is on my website, drmariaonspeaking.com. You can read all about my courses there, as well as find my blog there. But I'm also on all the socials, because I know that's where everybody is these days. So my go-to social media platform is LinkedIn. Dr. Maria Simbra is where I am on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, Dr. Maria on Speaking LLC. On Twitter, I'm Dr. M_on_speaking. And on Instagram, I'm Dr. Maria _on speaking. And you can get to my website from all of my socials, but you can also go there directly, drmariaonspeaking.com.
Well, thanks a lot for being here. It was truly, truly a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.
Well, guys, that's it for today. Stay tuned for more of our Design Your Physician Life podcast, which was brought to you today by our Max Salary Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. To reach Dr. Maria Simbra, please go to her website, drmariaonspeaking.com. We will continue to bring you useful resources to develop your physician entrepreneur life, like we did today with Dr. Maria Simbra, and much more. Thank you for joining us. We hope you had a great time the same way that we did. Stay in touch with us. Visit our website, maxsalary.com, MAXALLURE. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Share it with your friends. Give us 5 stars. We'll see you later. Have a great week. Bye.
Please remember that Design is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.